Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in. Cross and Crown channel is about presenting powerful proof for the Christian faith. If you want to support Mike as he makes videos and writes books, just go to Mike's Patreon page at patreon.com/mrob and kick in $1 or so. If you join us over there, that would be awesome. Supporting this work will help bring countless people to Christ. If you like this video, there's a donation button on our main YouTube page. Thanks for hanging out.
Good evening. This is Cross and Crown Radio and the Gospel Truth Podcast. I'm Mike Robinson, your host. Glad that you're with us tonight. We got an interesting show. We're going to be talking about whether the moon landings in the late 60s and early 70s were faked by the U.S. government and NASA. We're going to see that. We're going to see where the evidence goes. And we're also going to be talking about the abortion law that was passed in Alabama. Praise the Lord for that. Hello, Levi. It's good to have you tonight. And we're also going to be talking about numerous proofs for the existence of God, and I'm going to bring an exposition on 2 of them. But there's numerous ones, and you can see more in my book called Fake Atheism by Mike Robinson online. Also, if you have a chance, you can see in the description of this video on Facebook as well as when it gets on YouTube. If you can go to the link there for the Patreon page and give a few bucks a month, that really helps us a lot. But the moon landings. Did men actually get on the moon? I was a little kid when the astronauts landed on the moon, or supposedly landed on the moon by some estimates. But the main contention in most moon landing conspiracy theories is that the moon landings were faked on a Hollywood type of soundstage with actors and a set and professional lighting that was aimed at imitating the moon landscape. There are countless articles and books and YouTube videos dedicated, usually with great zeal. I will get a lot of hate mail and hate messages, DMs from folks that really believe ardently for the moon landings being fake. That's just part of the territory here. But I don't really care what people say. I want the truth. Why? Because Jesus said that he is the truth. So I care about what the truth is. The Bible also says that we shouldn't lie. So if you have kind of a bent towards conspiracy theories, my estimation is there might only be one true major conspiracy theory that might be true, and that could be possibly Kennedy's assassination. Hello, Tommy. So good to have you. Greetings from Granbury, Texas. We had another beautiful day out here in Granbury. Our town's about 8,000 people, and it's almost all Christian. Really wonderful town just south of Fort Worth and Dallas. But the only conspiracy I think in my studies, and I'm a guy who read one book a day, one academic book every single day. Hello, Chuck. I read one academic book every single day. I'm a speed reader for over 30 years. And then I also read the Bible more than I read those. And I would read it often in the Greek and the Hebrew because I wanted to know truth. That was my hobby. That's what I really enjoyed, was reading. I'd stay up really, really late at night, speed read through a book. So I'm well read on this conspiracies. And when I was a non-Christian, I actually believed in UFOs. I have videos on that in Cross and Crown Radio. You can see that on YouTube. I discuss how we know that UFOs are not biological alien creatures. But before I was saved, I really, really believed it. I had a whole shelf full of books on UFOs. One I remember is God Drives a Flying Saucer. That's the type of books I was reading before I was a Christian. So I'm well read in all other kinds of conspiracy. The Kennedy one is interesting only because I can't wrap my head around the odds that Oswald would just happen to be working at the book depository site, that building, that was later deemed to be the place for Kennedy's car to go through. What are the odds that Kennedy's car would travel through the area, the street where Oswald happened to work? I've never figured that one out. I've never seen an answer for that. Again, I'm not bent towards conspiracies. I try to bend towards truth. Whatever the truth is, that's what I want. If there's a bunch of conspiracies, so be it. If Bigfoot actually exists out there in the forest, so be it. That's what I want to know. but I have not found any. The Kennedy one is interesting because I just don't know how Oswald could happen to be working at the place that he could kill the president, and he's the guy that was fingered for that. So it seems like that could be a possible conspiracy. I don't know for sure, but that one seems to have some substance to it. There's also that lady that was taking all the photos, and she's in many of the photos before and after Kennedy was assassinated in 1963, and yet they've never been able to locate that lady, which seems really odd, right? So very interesting things there with the Kennedy assassination. But back to the moon landing. The main contention is this was all faked. It was done in a Hollywood movie production area. Yet here's the deal. This is something really fascinating to think about. If the lunar landings were faked in the 1960s, late 1960s, and the 1970s, atheistic Soviet Union, the atheistic China, Vietnam, and the other atheistic nations who utterly hated America, all those atheistic nations would love to absolutely embarrass the United States by exposing a fake moon landing, especially during the space race, which the Soviets wanted to win. So the Soviets are in this space race with America, and they were actually out in front for a long time, and all of a sudden we hurtle over them, and we supposedly land on the moon, which I think we did. In fact, I know we did. But we get to the moon, and if it didn't happen, the Soviets would want to produce that evidence to demonstrate to the world, wait a minute, America faked this whole thing. America is a third-rate country. We're the greatest country, and America is not. But they could not produce anything to demonstrate that America did not land on the moon. In fact, recently China had, and they're atheistic, had a particular spacecraft orbit the moon, and they took photos and they documented the moon landings, and a lot of the evidence from the moon landings were still there, and then the pictures from atheistic China. Also, about 10 years ago, the Japanese lunar orbiter, Selene, had pictures that confirmed the Apollo 15 site on the moon. The site is still there because there's no wind, there's not as much atmosphere as on the Earth, and they documented that, yes, America did land on the moon. Now, conspiracy buffs don't like hearing this kind of thing, but, you know, the evidence is powerful and it's strong. And remember, a few of the 12 men that landed on the moon, that set foot on the moon, a few of them are born-again Christians, including Charlie Duke and Jim Irwin. Just these two devout Christians wrote books, and they shared their testimonies of how they believe in Jesus. They shared the details of the events within their Apollo mission, walking on the moon. These two Christian astronauts should be taken as honest witnesses that men from America, from NASA, in the Apollo crews, actually landed on the moon and walked on the moon. It seems to be more difficult to fake a moon landing. Hello, Chuck. So good to see you, my friend. It seems to take more effort to fake a moon landing in stage one than to actually go to the moon. Again, you have all the enemies of America would love to give evidence demonstrating that America lied about such things. Now, old people remember watching on TV the amazing events of July 1969 when Neil Armstrong was the first man to walk on the moon. Yet some people think he never walked on the moon, that NASA and the government faked the Apollo moon landings. Reasons for this conspiracy vary. Some have great, really clean videos demonstrating how it was all faked. Yet, as I've given already two really powerful pieces of evidence, I'll give some more demonstrating that there's no way that America could have faked the moon landings. So they have these particular videos, these books, and a lot of these guys make a lot of money from it. A lot of it comes from the late 1970s movie. I remember when it came out. I was just a little kid, Capricorn 1, which a lot of people think was a movie about the fake moon landings. You might be thinking that, but you're wrong. It was a movie about, I think O.J. Simpson was in it, about fake landings on Mars, not on the moon, right? And the men came back, or the men were on the Earth. They never went to Mars, and they were hunted down by the authorities to shut them up. But it was to Mars, and they took a craft that looked similar to the Apollo crafts, but it was not about the moon. It was about Mars. So if you want to win a bet with somebody, you can ask them that question, whether that movie Capricorn 1 was about the fake moon landings, because it wasn't. It was about a fake Mars landing. Furthermore, large letters at the top of the posters of the film ask a question. This is a question it asked. Would you be shocked to find out that the greatest moment of our recent history may not have happened at all? See, a lot of us have this kind of yearning for conspiracies. You know, there's something about it. We don't trust government. We know men lie. We know a lot of men and women in power are corrupt, so we kind of go in that direction. We think, well, you know, maybe if you're Christian, the devil's in control of all these things, so there's these conspiracies. Many people seem to falsely recall that it was a faked moon landing in that movie, but it was not. Like I said earlier, it was a landing on Mars that was faked. Now, here's one of the pieces of evidence that the people that deny that men actually land on the moon, they bring forth. They show that, and this was fascinating when you look at the picture of the flag, the American flag, and it seems to be flapping in the wind. So you can see in the pictures and the video of the flag, it's not just a straight flag because the moon has no wind. So if it was faked and it was on the Earth or in a production studio, the wind or the air conditioning unit could make the flag flap, is the argument. So there's the flag flapping seemingly, and you say, yikes, how can that be? There's no air on the moon. How can that be? The truth is the flag is not flapping at all. If you check out the flag and you really look at it closely, the flag is not blowing in any wind. It was moved as it was stuck into the ground, and it kept this flowing, this kind of bent shape, because of the weak gravity on the moon. That's the truth. And you can see that if you check out all the sites, not just the conspiracy sites. In the film of the astronaut putting the flag into the surface of the moon, and it appears that the flag is moving through the wind. The flag appears to flap back and forth because when the astronauts were sticking it into the ground, they rotated it back and forth to dig into the surface. You've probably done that if you've put any signs in your front yard before. This made the flag seem to flow and wave by some wind, especially since there's no gravity or less gravity on the moon and no wind. It stayed in that position to make it look that way. There's a huge amount of footage of the flag showing that they stood on the lunar surface in precisely the exact position that you see those pictures in. They never moved. After that picture that looks like they moved, they never moved. No wind. Another piece of evidence that men never landed on the moon they offer is, where are the stars in the moon landing pictures? So many of the pictures have no stars, zero, only darkness. But in point of fact, this is often the case of photographs from that era, from space, where the gap between the light and dark is significant. From the surface, the moon reflects the dominating sunlight and looks very bright in the pictures. The brightness drowns out the dim, very dim lights of the stars in the black sky. The human eye can adjust and pick out the stars, but unless the camera is set on the right settings, the cameras of that era were not very good with the contrast of the deep dark versus the massive light of the sun and then the dim lights of the stars. Even recently, those on the space station took pictures of the Earth that show a totally starless background, but the same dimness regarding the contrast. And remember, as I said earlier, the USSR, China, Vietnam, the communist Eastern Bloc countries, Cuba, absolutely loathed the United States. They hated us. And they would love to absolutely embarrass the United States of America by exposing a fake moon landing. Soviets had capsules in space. They had strong and still have strong telescopes. They would show how fake it is if they could, but they couldn't because it's not fake. Remember, the Soviets hated God, hated America because of capitalism and because of Christianity. It was not just kind of a disagreement. It was actually a hatred, to where in the late 60s, or actually in the early 60s, maybe even the late 50s, all the way through the 70s, a lot of people feared a nuclear war. If you don't believe me, look at all the episodes on Twilight Zone that cover that subject from the early 60s. Now, there's another so-called piece of evidence of the fake moon landings, and that's that famed rock that's labeled with a C on it from the Apollo 16 trip to the moon. In Hollywood movies, props are often lettered so the film crews can remember where to place them. And there's a picture of a rock that seems to have a C on it, the letter C. The idea is that the rock in the photo is a prop that someone must have accidentally placed upside down. Yet in reality, the label really isn't on the rock. You just have to do a little bit of work. The picture of the rock is taken from a much larger photo of the lunar surface. When you look at the original image, the original photograph, the first photo of the rock before it was reproduced in other pictures, in the original, the picture, the C marking isn't there. It's not there. It seems a C was placed on copies somehow by accident. Maybe a small piece of hair or some kind of thread might have been caught on the copy machine. Who knows how it got there? But it's not on the original. And that's what matters. Original picture, it's not there. So the Apollo 15 site is still visible. The Japanese, about 10 years ago, sent Selene, a lunar orbiter, over that site. They took photos and they documented that the site still stands. The evidence of the landing is still there, and there's proof from modern visitations of the moon that the Apollo astronauts were there. Okay? The landscape and the remains of the site of Apollo 15, captured by the Japanese in 2008, captured images of a halo of lunar dust created by the Apollo 15 exhaust. So it's a departure. The evidence is still there because, again, there's no wind, there's little gravity, very little dust that falls on the moon. You can still see, which is fascinating, you can still see the astronauts' footprints. This is amazing. But that's a type of atmosphere, or lack thereof, the moon has. Now, the NASA's lunar orbiter, which has been in orbit around the moon for 10 years, has taken photographs of the Apollo landing sites. These pictures show the Apollo spacecraft in the precise locations, and remarkably, you can see, like I said earlier, the actual footprints of the astronauts as they explored the moon and found that it was not made of green cheese. The Apollo landing sites have been identified and photographed by an assortment of spacecraft from Japan, China, India, and the United States. China has lots to gain in exposing the United States as a fraud. China's government is atheistic and wants to diminish the United States and raise its own position in the world. If China could expose the moon landings as fake, that would greatly benefit them and their their international standing. It'd be over. But China affirmed the moon landings, even though in many ways they're the enemy of the United States. Also, the proof in the moon rocks. 135 different countries received moon rocks from the United States. Does not sound like what a conspiracy would do. Sent them all around the world. Then the Soviets landed on the moon, not men, but they landed spacecraft on the moon. They took up rocks, and they found that the rocks that they took were similar as the rocks that were gathered by the Apollo landings. And again, the atheistic countries, Soviet Union, China, Vietnam, Eastern Bloc. They would have loved to expose the United States as a big fraud that we never landed on the moon. So the fake moon landing theory is not to be affirmed by Christians because you serve the God of truth. Jesus said he is the truth. The Bible says the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of truth. That the Bible is the word of truth. That we are to stand up and affirm and profess and believe the truth. We are not to be those who lie. So if you kind of get fascinated towards that, make sure whatever conspiracy you're trying to advocate is actually true. Don't just do it because it's fascinating or you want to get attention to yourself or whatever. Stand for the truth. And remember, a few of the 12 men who landed on the moon were born-again Christians, including Charlie Duke and Jim Irwin, strong born-again Christians who said and documented that they went to the moon, and they documented also their testimonies of coming to faith in Jesus Christ. They wrote books about it, and you can read those and get them cheap on Amazon right now. So, to me, it's not even close. It's case closed. The United States went to the moon. If we didn't go to the moon, there'd be no footprints there right now, which many countries, even countries that are enemies, have photographed. Years ago, the Soviet Union would have revealed that we were a big fraud. They never did because they couldn't because we went to the moon. Born-again Christians went to the moon and professed that they actually did that. The particulars that can be used and misused to try to make it a conspiracy. If you get all the truth, just like that photo with the little C on it, if you just get that photo, you can say, oh, look, we never got their conspiracy. This is from a Hollywood set. But if you take enough time to go to the original picture, you'll see before the copies were made, there was no C on the pictures. Okay, it's just a matter of doing a little homework. The flag that looks like it's blowing in the wind. If you just did a little bit more homework and looked at the whole video, you'll see the astronauts turning it into the ground, the stake into the ground that had the flag on, and the flag moving because they're turning it, and the flag stayed exactly as they turned it, and there's no wind blowing, if you see the whole video. Now, more importantly, Alabama banned the abortion. Banned abortion. This is wonderful. It says here in the Wall Street Journal, the Alabama Senate passed an anti-abortion bill. I would call it pro-life. Notice how most of the news media, even the Wall Street Journal, which leans center to a little bit right sometimes, has some leftists. The Alabama Senate passed an anti-abortion bill, not pro-life they say, that would effectively ban the procedure and is aimed at reaching the United States Supreme Court to challenge a woman's right to terminate a pregnancy. Notice the language. The woman's right, presupposing it's a right to kill somebody. And again, this is the Wall Street Journal, not the New York Times, not a liberal rag, not MSNBC. But the Wall Street Journal uses this language and then says it calls it terminating a pregnancy. Okay. If you were in that womb and the pregnancy was terminated, you would not call that a termination of the pregnancy. Or have the writer, let's see, Arian, I don't know if he's a man or a woman. Let's say he's a man. And he had a wife and somebody kidnapped her and tied him and her up and said, look, we're going to kill your baby in the womb of your wife right in front of you. Would he call that just the termination of a pregnancy? I don't think so. It's sad, the language that they use. Even folks that might be in the center, generally the center is just a softer leftist, unfortunately. But good news, it is now illegal to have an abortion in Alabama, which is great news. Obama should get saved. Pray for his salvation. But Alabama, the state of Alabama, I hope other states follow. If ever there's going to be, and I don't think there will, and I hope there's not, some kind of civil war, actual physical battle, it would probably be over abortion and perhaps certain rights of fringe groups, fringe sexual groups. But I don't think that would prompt that from the South and Texas and others. But I think the abortion issue could. Because most Christians, most people who believe in the Bible know that killing a baby in the womb is murder. And there's really no place you can go once you know it's murder. I mean, what can you do? You know, you believe it's murder because it is. It's taking a life of a human being. There's really nowhere you can go. I hope it doesn't come to that. My prayer is a revival across the country, especially the Northeast and the West and East Coasts. Those folks need to be saved. They don't need just our hatred. They don't need just us rebuking them. They need some of that rebuke, yes. We know that. But we pray that as God's law gets pressed upon them and the gospel gets preached, that God would grant us revival and see a lot of them, millions and millions of them need to get saved for things to change. Now, turning another page, let's go to proof for the existence of God. I'm going to list dozens and dozens of them. You can get this in my book, God Does Exist, on Amazon by Mike Robinson, as well as God Must Exist. I have a huge list of arguments for the existence of God, great exposition on it, giving certainty and certitude for the existence of God, including demonstrating how doubt even proves God. So you ever fall in a little bit of doubt, get that book, God Does Exist by Mike Robinson, or God Must Exist if you want to get the copy for Kindle or for your phone, smartphone. Okay, so let me go through a few here. The transcendental argument from logic, powerful argument, you can see that in the book. Evidential argument from the resurrection, powerful argument, you can also see that in the book. Evidential argument from messianic prophecies, mathematically impossible for that argument not to be true. The design argument, the argument from predication, the transcendental argument, from causality, the argument from continuous personal identity. That's one of my unique arguments I bring forth there. The argument from concepts, I developed that also. You can also get that in the book I wrote called Fake Atheism by Mike Robinson, Fake Atheism. Taylor's ontological argument, which helped influence my ontological argument, although mine's more based on the transcendental aspect of reality, including God's existence and what must be. In other words, what has to exist for us to have truth, for us to have knowledge. Also, the transcendental ontological argument, the argument from mathematics, I developed that. It's really a powerful argument. Especially if you're into mathematics or you're talking to somebody who seems to be a smart atheist, you can see that. The argument from perfection is also in there. Rader's argument, a modal tag argument. Then I developed my own, so it's called Robinson's modal tag argument. The argument from propositions, the argument from truth, which I'm going to give you in just a few minutes. The argument from knowledge. Powerful, powerful arguments. See, these arguments and many others bring out the fact, the truth that's undeniable, that it takes too much blind faith, irrational faith to believe that order came from disorder, that design came from chaos, that uniformity came from the accidental. It takes too much blind faith as atheists believe that intelligence came from non-intelligence. It takes too much blind faith even for atheists to believe that personality came from non-personality, that love came from hard matter, that everything came from nothing. Nobody, including the most stout atheist, has enough blind faith to believe in that. Now, what's interesting is some evidential arguments. But remember, the evidential arguments, evidence is great because everything in the universe is evidence for God's existence. All of it is. But yet you can place it within the context of affirming that God must exist to even look at the evidence. Why? Because the laws of logic, as well as other universal mutables, must be deployed to analyze any bit of evidence there is. Whatever evidence, whether it's bad evidence or good evidence, whatever gets put on the table must be examined. And when it's examined and when you bring forth an analysis to that, you must utilize the laws of logic in that analysis as well as other universal immutables. But one piece of evidence is there was a DNA discovery that all humans descended from Adam and Eve after a big cataclysm. Isn't that interesting? Scientists just recently in the United States and Switzerland have announced an amazing discovery that all modern humans are descended from a common father and mother who appeared on the scene thousands of years ago after a major disaster. Sound familiar? I think I've read that somewhere. A massive event that almost wiped out the human race. Although the researchers believe in Darwinism, I'm not sure how, and will not point to the biblical Adam and Eve, they should, or even Noah and his wife, their DNA discovery has stirred a lot of debate and is challenging the view that most atheists hold. See, they said that the DNA is like barcodes, and they study these genetic barcodes, which has information. Information can only come from intelligence. Everybody knows that. But the information that's within every organism's DNA, including human DNA, they call them barcodes in this research. And they found out that the barcodes are snippets of information of the DNA that reside outside of living cells in their nucleus. So this DNA, which mothers pass down from generation to generation, proves that we all came from one father and one mother after a massive cataclysm, and that is phenomenal. A major event like a worldwide flood, perhaps, right? Major disaster. Okay, here's my argument. It's a version of the argument from truth. It's my version, and I think it's really unique. And in all the arguments I've had with atheists, it has been unassailed. It's been pressed and proved and demonstrated. Here it is. Unchangeable, universal, absolute truth exists, like a square is a square, or 2 + 2 is 4. Unchangeable, universal, absolute truth is ontologically universal and greater and loftier than the material cosmos or the physical human brain, since both are not absolutes, and they're not universal, and they're not unchanging. God is unchanging, has universal power and reach, and is absolute in his aseity. God has thus the nature or the ontological capacity to account for unchanging, immutable, universal, absolute truth. If unchanging, universal, absolute truth, like 2 + 2 is 4, square is a square, if unchanging, universal, absolute truth, then God. Unchanging, universal, absolute truth, thus God. There's no way to get around that. That is a powerful argument, and nobody can refute that. When they refute it, they have to utilize the resources that only God can supply. The rational pre-environment can only be based upon God's ontology, and it's over. It's that simple. Even, like we said earlier, the examination and the testing of evidence requires the law of identity, the law of non-contradiction, and these universal mutables, which only God's nature can supply. Only God's nature can be the fountain of such. Only God's nature can be the source of such. The physical cosmos is not immutable. It's not unchanging. It's a particular universe. It's not universal. The human brain is not universal. It's not immutable. It's not unchanging. You cannot give what you don't have. So these entities, these things that are universal and immutable, the physical world, the cosmos, and human brains cannot provide. Only God, who has universal reach and power and reign and is immutable, has the nature to provide these universal immutables. It's that simple. It's that powerful. Now, you heard earlier that Jesus Christ died on the cross for our sins. He was buried and he rose again on the third day. Jesus is Savior and Lord. If you heard this broadcast and God has been tugging on your heart to come to Christ, This is your moment. This is your time. What you do is you forget. It doesn't matter if you were an atheist, agnostic, or a Hindu. Or forget all that. Put it all aside. Turn from that and turn to Jesus. If God's tugging on your heart through his word and spirit, the gospel has been preached to you. If you now believe, you just profess to the Father. Romans 10 says to profess. You profess that I believe. I believe in Jesus. I believe Jesus is the Son of God and the Son of Man. I believe Jesus died on the cross for all my sins. And I believe that God raised him from the dead. I give him my whole heart, my whole life. I turn from my ways. And I will follow him all the days of my life. If that's you, if you came to Christ tonight or recently, send us a direct message or send us an email or comment, and you can get 2 free books. I've written over 40 of them. Any 2 books that I've written, request, we'll send them to you. We'll pay the postage. Just let us know. We love to send books to people that just came to faith. Let us know. And so this is Pastor Mike Robinson. Until next time, so glad that you joined us. May God richly bless you.
Hey guys, you can really help us if you donate to our worldwide media outreach. Just go to our Patreon page at Mike Robinson Apologetics on Patreon, or click the donate button on our main page on YouTube and give as the Lord leads. Thank you so much.
So many people think, I can't change, I can't do this, I can't be successful, it's impossible. We have to understand there's resources out there that make the impossible possible these days. In the jungle in the Philippines, there's a Nepenthes plant, a plant that eats rats. Just a few years ago, people thought it would be impossible for a plant to eat a rat. Yes, scientists had discovered plants that were meat-eating, but they would eat insects and spiders generally. But there in Mount Victoria in the Philippines, scientists found the largest meat-eating plant ever. What happens is the plant entices the rat with its sugary nectar. The rat comes in and slips on its waxy substance and falls into its sticky goo. And then the digestive enzymes come in and start digesting the rat while it's alive. I wouldn't want to be the rat. But notice, what they thought was impossible is possible. Think of Newton's physics that took over science when Newton discovered all those incredible discoveries that he did using mathematics and logic. After that, everybody thought the whole cosmos is just a mechanism, just a design mechanism. But then, in the 20th century, they discovered quantum theory, and we found out things that we thought were impossible are now possible. That's amazing. To be successful at anything, you need to be able to spot an opportunity, a possible breakthrough when you see one, so that wellness, wholeness, victory, and success can come in your life. Specifically, you need to identify a problem or a breach and come up with a pioneering or innovative solution. You can do that. You can advance it and you can touch others. So how do you learn to identify opportunities in business or in your career? Many think it's just inborn. No, it's not. That's not true. Others say, well, it's just a matter of past experience. That can help, but it's not just that. The key is recognizing opportunities, have an openness to it, and to be able to seize them while you advance in your life. When you see your business venture, your career, or your goals as a potential for progression, for an advancement, and for an achievement of rewards, to bring pleasure to yourself and your family and those around you and your community, this is called what I call advancement focus. Your advancement targeting, when you think about these things and you ponder them, write them down, and you go forward. I'll give you some tips on how to go forward in these areas. In contrast, if you approach your business or your success targets on not risking, on not losing things, on avoiding danger, tacitly, indirectly, you're leaning on fear and not on hope. This is prevention targeting. That's good for some things, but not in going forward with success. You need to be an opportunity spotter. And so here's some tips that you can have for your business venture or your career, your education, or your hobby, how to go forward. For each goal, Make a list of ways in which you can prosper. How that will bring prosperity and success to you and your family and those around you. What you gain if you're effective in achieving that specific goal. Write it down. Secondly, imagine yourself 3 or 5 or 12 years down the road, and what type of person and what kind of activity would you like to see achieved through doing that goal? What would life be like in 3, 5, 7, or 12 years? Write that down. What are your ambitions? What are your dreams? What would you hope to achieve that can bring fulfillment and success and wholeness to you, your family, and your community? Thinking about your future is very, very important than writing it down. How do you increase confidence? Reflect on past accomplishments. Blow it up in your mind, ponder it, and blow it up more and more, and think about that. Go out to the beach, go out to the forest, go out to the mountains, go out and get alone, and think about those accomplishments you've had in the past. Ponder it, focus on it, ruminate on it, and blow it up, and get involved in it in your mind. Think about your big win or your achievement, a time where you really, really succeeded at an endeavor you went forward. You felt really pumped up about that success that you were able to achieve. Thinking about past gains with gratitude bring you towards your advancement target. Couple this with an attitude that says, you know what? I'm going to ignore the negative and I'm going to go forward. So are you advancement targeting or are you prevention focused? Are you blah and beige and bland and just kind of sitting there, sitting around, watching Roseanne reruns? If that's you, you need to get up and go forward. Successful people, they act on small improvements towards their major goals. They don't need to have a major goal immediately, but they act on small improvements towards their major goals, and they rejoice in small gains. Multimillionaire Henry Ford said this: "Nothing is particularly hard if you divide it in small pieces." Successful people, they reach their desires and their goals by making small, continuous improvements every day. And number 2, they work hard. They work long hours at their goals. They're not slackers. If you tell yourself, oh, I deserve the day off. Oh, I'll just go do it the next day. Oh, I need to treat myself to some time away. If you do that, you're probably not going to be successful. You can see this at a gym. I've been going to gyms for over 30, 40 years now. And I noticed that all the people that are gym rats, we go through our time in January and the time right before summer, when all these people come and join the gym thinking they're going to get into shape. And so all of a sudden you can't get machines because there's so many people that have come in to get into shape. But we all know that all we have to do is hold out till February, hold out just a couple weeks, and all the people that signed up for the new year, all the people who signed up at the summer, they're going to fade and disappear, and all the machines and all the weight equipment will be available for us again because they don't follow through. What I found in discussing this with people is this. Here's one of the keys. They find reasons why they should avoid the gym. Now, there are flus that come, there's illnesses that occur, we know that. That's fine. But beyond that type of thing, they look for reasons why they could avoid the gym, instead of turning around and looking for reasons why you should go to the gym. That's what you do. You turn it around. And with success, you look for reasons to keep working towards your success instead of giving yourself excuses on why you shouldn't work for your goals. So don't do that. Get alone and get rid of all these distractions. Write this down and then go forward. I'll give you one example of a guy who thought outside the box, who really, really went forward. He developed what's called smell dating. It's a new dating service. It's not eHarmony. It's not Tinder. It's not Christian Mingle. But it's a new dating service based on smell. One lady who tried it said, I tried smell dating and it didn't stink. Smell dating. This is what happens. You sign up, you send in your money, and they send you a t-shirt. You wear the t-shirt for 3 days without deodorant and without perfume or cologne. Then you send it back. And then they match your t-shirt on the basis of smell. And so you send it without perfume, without deodorant, send it back. And then there's a lot of science behind this. The sweaty t-shirt experiment showed that a sense of smell may have a lot to do with our mate choice. Females sniffing t-shirts recently worn by males favored the scent of those whose immune response genes were different than their own. So their immune system was matched, compatible with those that they liked the smell of. So they were told to write if it smelled good, if it smelled pleasant, or it was bad. And when they found the ones that smelled good, almost always it matched up with gene expression that would put them together and would be a good match for their kids genetically. So that's interesting. Subtle chemical signals, pheromones, have long been known to draw pairs together in animals. In mice, for example, experiments showed that pheromones acted as such things to attract males and females together who were genetically similar, except they had a different type of immune system gene, and so they were able to unite and have really healthy children or offspring. The difference made a tremendous survival benefit for the mice, and we see this also with men and women. The sweaty t-shirt experiment set up to test women. They gave volunteers 49 women the t-shirts of 44 men, and the men had to wear the t-shirt for 3 days without perfume, cologne, or deodorant. And in the laboratory, the researchers put the t-shirt in a box and equipped it with a smelling hole and invited the women volunteers to come in and smell and sniff the boxes. Their task was to sample the odor of the 7 boxes and describe each odor as to the intensity, how pleasant, how attractive it was. The results were very striking. Overall, the women preferred the scents of the t-shirts worn by men whose MHC genes were different than our own. In other words, very, very compatible. Which is why so many people say, well, I don't know why we're together, it's just chemistry. Well, there's a truth to that. And so they would get together and they'd have healthier children than if they selected other people, all based on the scent of smell. That's really interesting. So this guy thought outside the box and invents this dating service and gets very, very successful. So you need to find a need and make a unique niche to meet that need so that you make yourself away from all the other competitors. You don't want to compete with everybody else, but you want to have your own niche. That's very, very important. The founder of Barnum and Bailey Circus, P.T. Barnum, was a millionaire, very, very successful. But his first big ticket item was, his first popular attraction was, I quote, a 6-foot-tall, man-eating chicken. That's what drew all the people in, helped make him all the money to start off his millionaire venture. 6-foot-tall, man-eating chicken. And you go in and you see a man 6 feet tall and he's eating chicken. Barnum didn't lie, but he got great success by thinking outside the box, thinking outside the norm. Now, you don't want to scam people, obviously, but you do want to think different than everybody else. You want to get a niche like that guy did with the body odor dating service. Imagine that. Barnum, for years and years, was mocked behind his back. Mocked and mocked and mocked behind his back because he had an island, Ivy Island, that was given to him by his grandfather at his birth. But everybody knew that Ivy Island was worthless. It was just a swamp loaded with poison ivy. But he didn't know that. All of his relatives acted like Ivy Island was worth a lot of money, but behind his back, they mocked him. At 10, he went to see what he thought was a great real estate prize in Ivy Island. There he found out it was all swamp and poison ivy, worthless. He discovered what everybody else knew, and that laughed behind his back for years and years, that his Ivy Island was not worth anything whatsoever. But catch this, decades later, Barnum is starting out his circus profession, starting out towards his millions, and he wants to buy a museum in New York. He puts down an offer. The offer is turned down. And so he says, okay, I'll give you my deed to Ivy Island. And the bank took the deed, sight unseen, and gave him the loan. He bought the museum and started his way towards millions. What everybody else thought was worthless, a troubling gift, worthless property, Barnum used to begin his fame and his fortune and earn his millions. Again, we don't want to seek to scam people, but don't give up hope. Don't think what you have is worthless. Don't think that the gifts that you've been given are not worth anything. What you have is what you need. And there's resources available on the internet today that they were never available 15, 20 years ago and back. There's great opportunity. And last thing I will say is, when you research it, when you write down your goals, when you thought it through and you want to go forward, you developed your niche and you're seeing a need, then go for it. Absolutely go for it. Just, take no prisoners and go for it. In 1519, in the spring, the famous explorer and conquistador Hernando Cortez had secured 11 ships and 700 men from Spain. He's commanding this impressive armada, and he set sail to the New World. His transatlantic voyage took him several months, and Cortez landed in Veracruz. The first thing that he did was plant Spain's flag. And the second thing that Cortez did, he performed one of history's most dramatic acts that would shock his men. Before their very eyes, Cortez ordered all the ships to be burned, set afire, and destroyed. The message was clear. There was no turning back. They were all in. There's no way going back. They had to go forward. And that's what I would encourage you to go forward. Don't limit yourself. Just go forward. This is Mike Robinson. Till next time, saying may God bless you.
Hey guys, you can really help us if you donate to our worldwide media outreach. Just go to our Patreon page at Mike Robinson Apologetics on Patreon, or click the donate button on our main page on YouTube and give as the Lord leads. Thank you so much.